Hey everyone, welcome back to the Akita Life. My name is Tony, and with me as always is Haga, the American Akita. And today I want to talk all about getting your Akita neutered, if you should do it, when you should do it, what to expect when you do it. And this is based on the experience that we just had. I'm going to drop in some vlog footage about the experience. And also, I'm not going to be talking about spaying your female Akitas because I don't have a female dog. I've never had a female dog, so I cannot speak with any firsthand knowledge of that. So let's get into it. Okay, so today is a big day, kind of a sad day. Haga is going to go get neutered. He obviously doesn't know because he doesn't know what that means. But while he's having that done, he's also going to have a gastroplexy, which is where they tack down the stomach of the dog to help prevent bloat, which can happen in large dogs or barrel-chested dogs. And I'm going to make a whole video specifically about that later, about bloat. And he's also going to have a rectal polyp removed. He has a growth. And it could be potentially cancerous, so that needs to be taken out. So big day, I'm a little nervous. This is the first time any of my pets have ever had a surgery. Big day for this guy, feel bad for him. He doesn't know what's coming. He's gonna be in rough shape, but he had a good nice long morning walk, so. So yes, we do bring Haga to PetSmart, aka Banfield, and I'm going to make a video about that as well. So we are currently waiting for the vet to get here. The vet techs tried to do some blood work, and Haga was not having it. They asked me to come help, and there was three of us trying to get blood out of him. I was holding him down with another tech, and we had a muzzle on him, and he was just not having it. So it's funny because just this morning he was snuggling with me in bed, being all sweet, and then back there he was growling and being very ferocious, pretty intimidating actually. So that's the downside of an Akita is when they say no, they mean no. So we are on day 9 or 10 since Haga first got neutered, and his procedure wasn't as straightforward as it normally would be for most dogs because not only was he getting neutered, but we were also doing a gastropexy, which is tacking the stomach down, and he had a growth, a rectal polyp that he needed removed. So he actually had 3 procedures in one. We opted to just do them all at the same time, and I am going to make a separate video about bloat in Akitas and the gastropexy, so hit that subscribe button, be on the lookout for that. Okay, so first let's talk about if you should actually get your Akita neutered. And neutering dogs has been the norm for probably the last 30, 40, 50 years. And the reason for that is in the 70s, animal populations were out of control. Shelters were having to euthanize hundreds or thousands of animals, and they wanted to cut back on that, so they started to neuter and spay. That became the normal practice, and that's pretty much what people have done since then, unless they plan on showing their dogs, because your dogs do need to be intact in order to show them in dog shows. And if you're not familiar with how dog showing works, I'm not an expert, but basically it's all about presenting a dog that really fits the definition of the breed standard as closely as possible. So obviously, if the dog's been altered and had their testicles removed, hard to do that. So you have to have your dog intact in order to show them. But recently, I'd say probably in the last 10, 15 years, there has been a push to not neuter or spay your animals. And the reason for that is it does have a significant hormonal impact. You're taking away organs that produce hormones in a male dog. It's the testicles, which produce primarily testosterone. So there can be some health consequences to that. And there is some information, some research data to suggest that neutering at a very young age could possibly lead to a greater instance of hip dysplasia or other joint or bone problems later in life. Now that sounds scary, and it sounds like a great reason not to neuter your dog. But there's also information about
how neutering actually extends the lifespan of your dog. And of course, if you remove the testicles, you remove any chance of there being testicular cancer, and it also helps to reduce the risk of some prostate issues as well. So it really just comes down to your own preference, what makes sense for you as an owner. Definitely speak to your vet about it. For us, there were a few reasons why we decided to do it. Number one, it was in our contract with our breeder that if we were not going to show Haga, which we are not, that he needed to be neutered, and they wanted it done at 18 months. We did it at 15, and I'll touch on that in a bit. Also, knowing that, hey, we're greatly reducing the risk of developing something like testicular cancer, and there's some other issues with the testicles that can happen. You can get testicular torsion, things like that. That was a peace of mind. But also, we bring Haga to daycare once a week with a trainer, and he's there with other dogs, and they do not allow male dogs to be fully intact after a certain age. Actually, it's 12 months at most places, but our trainer was gracious enough to let us, have a couple months leeway. But that is a consideration. If you are traveling, it might be difficult to find somewhere to board your dog or your Akita specifically if they are intact. So those are all things that you have to consider. When it comes to health stuff about the hips and the lifespan and is it healthy, is it not healthy, I would say no one can say for any certainty because there's just not enough research data out there. Any clinical research, whether it's for animals or for humans, is very expensive. And unless there's a good financial reason to do that research, it's usually not getting done. So in the case of animal medicine, I would just say there's probably not as many trials and research as we'd like there to be to really have a super informed decision. I will say that all of the data that suggests that neutering has a negative impact, all of that was pointing towards early neutering. So most of those studies were done with the animal being less than 12 months old. And I remember when I took home my Akita mix rescue, Loki, he was already neutered when we got him from the shelter, and I think he was 3 or 4 months old. So people are doing it very young. The Akita Club of America, they recommend 12 months. Most breeders recommend 18 months. We did it at 15 because we knew that we had to get that rectal polyp out because it was potentially cancerous. And we just figured, why put this poor guy through multiple surgeries? Let's just do it all at once. And in retrospect, I 100% think that was the right decision. So Haga had his surgery today. He was in surgery for, I think, about 2 hours. Everything went smoothly. They held him at the animal hospital for a few hours afterwards. We picked him up around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's about 9 now. He was really out of it for the first couple hours. And he's just now getting a little more pep in his step. His tail is finally back up. His tail was down right up until about 5 minutes ago. But he's definitely in some discomfort. We're having a hard time getting him to lay down. He's only laid down for maybe a total of 30 minutes cumulatively in the 4 or 5 hours that we've been home. Okay, so when we took Haga home, he was obviously out of it. He had been, under anesthesia, been given heavy pain medications, and he was just very lethargic, very tired, was very out of it. He had the cone on, he looked ridiculous. And what was unfortunate was he actually hardly laid down for the first 24 hours he was home, which I can only assume was miserable because he had been cut open. I can't imagine standing for that long was comfortable. I think it was also uncomfortable for him to lay down, and he was very confused because he was in pain, he was drugged. And so they sent us home with pain medication and antibiotics, which is standard procedure. He was falling asleep standing up. He was so against laying down. He was so tired that he would just fall asleep while standing. So Katie, my girlfriend, basically stayed up all night with him to make sure that he didn't fall down. We kind of rigged like a little safe house in his crate to, if he did fall, that we thought would help, but he really didn't lay down on that either. So I spoke with a friend of mine who's a vet, and she actually recommended anxiety medication. We gave that to him, and within 30 minutes, he was on the ground, passed out. So that, I would say, is definitely a must. And we posted about him not laying down on Instagram, and a lot of people messaged us and said, actually, my dog did the same thing when they were spayed or neutered. So I think I don't know if it's a pain thing or a anxiety thing or a confusion thing or a mix of those, but I would highly recommend, if you are getting your pet spayed or neutered, go home with some anxiety medication in hand. You don't have to give it to them, but if they do start to show some signs of that, like standing around, that's not safe. They could fall, they could hurt themselves, tear their stitches open, what have you. Definitely good to have. Now, we took the cone off of him immediately because he was so out of it. He was banging into stuff. We thought he was going to hurt himself, and he was so out of it, we were like, okay, he's clearly not going to try to lick the incisions because he's just not mentally there to do that. So we put an inflatable donut on him. I think we got it on Amazon. I'll put a link below. And we've used that before when he had a hot spot. That worked great. It gives him a lot more mobility, and it's just a little more comfortable for him. He can lay down, and it kind of works as a little pillow. So we kept that on him for the night, and then we took it off to give him a little break and to let him just kind of feel a little more comfortable. And he didn't try to lick the incisions. And so we kept it off of him, we kept an eye on him, and he didn't try to lick the incisions. And in the past 10 days, he has not once tried to lick his incisions. So the cone for us was completely unnecessary. Even the donut was unnecessary. So that was a huge relief, being able to let him just be free, be mobile, and be comfortable and not have to worry about him. And we kept a really good eye on him for hours and hours and hours. So I felt comfortable leaving the house without the cone or the donut on. And we have cameras set up around here so I can check in, and he literally has not once tried to lick those incisions. So that was really nice. So let me grab the medicine and I'll go over what they gave him for meds. Okay, so for the anxiety, we got trazodone, 100 milligrams. And this was, I think, about $30. And I know that because I went back to the vet later to pick this up separately. The pain medication and the antibiotic, we had Simplicef, 200 milligrams for the antibiotic, and Rimadyl, 75 milligrams. These are chewable tablets for the pain medication. I'm not sure how much these two were because it was all rolled into what we paid for the entire procedure, which, in case you were wondering, like I said in the vlog, we went to Banfield Pet Hospital, and the entire procedure, the gastropexy, the neutering, the removal of the rectal polyp, plus a biopsy on the polyp, plus these two medications, was just about $1,400. So it actually wasn't too bad. I think the neutering itself was $400, and then some combination of the remaining $1,000 was the gastropexy and the biopsy. The biopsy took about 7 days to get the results back. The vet actually called us at 7 o'clock on Friday night, and so I was a little nervous when I saw the animal hospital calling that late. I thought, ooh, that might not be good news, but the biopsy came back benign, just a growth of tissue, not cancerous at all. So that was so much of a relief to hear, because I was actually really nervous about that, because rectal polyps and growths like that aren't common in younger dogs. You usually see it in older dogs, so I was a bit concerned. So for the first few days, the anxiety medication really knocked Haga out. Every time we give it to him, he'd basically just pass out. He's definitely adapted to it now. Doesn't really seem to have much of an effect on him, but it also seems like we don't really need it. But we did just finish the dose as prescribed, as you always should with all of your medications prescribed by your doctor or your vet. And the doctors and the vet said he has to chill out for 14 days. No running, no jumping, no strenuous activity to let that stuff heal. That, honestly, aside from the first 24 hours when we were holding him up while he was falling asleep, standing up, keeping him chilled out has been the biggest challenge so far, because we aren't taking him on his normal long walks, and so he's got a ton of energy. He's obviously feeling better. There's been a couple times where he's had zoomies and gone zooming around the house, and we've had to grab him and hold him down because he just wants to play. But everything looks like it's healing really well. I'll show you some footage of the scars and whatnot, but there's no redness or swelling, nothing's torn, none of the stitches have popped out, so everything seems to be healing as it should. So just to recap, if you have an Akita, a male Akita specifically, and you're thinking about neutering them, should you do it? It's hard to say. It's a personal decision. I don't think stopping your dog from impregnating another dog or getting pregnant is a good reason to get them neutered or spayed. And the reason for that is, you know, if you can't handle that anyway, you probably aren't responsible enough to own a dog. It's just my opinion. But is it safe to do? I mean, obviously the procedure is very safe. They've been doing this for decades now. They have it down really good. There's no issues there. But as far as the long-term health impacts, I think it's really difficult to say. I think there's some positives and some negatives. So for us, it was just an easy decision because, you know, it made our lives a little bit easier with bringing them to daycare, and we're honoring our contract with our breeder, and also just, you know, removing some health issues, some known health issues down the road, like the cancer and whatnot. As far as temperament goes, there's no hard research or data to say, yes, this definitively changes a dog's behavior. I hope this video was helpful. I actually would have benefited from a video like this had I watched one before we had Haga neutered. Just knowing this stuff about him standing up, that's common, not to freak out about it. There are ways around it. That would have been really helpful. Would have saved myself and definitely Katie some sleep that first night if we had gone home with the anxiety medications. But he's, like I said, about 10 days out. He's feeling 100% back to normal. He's just his normal goofy self. And we're just excited that he's a happy, healthy dog. So thanks so much for watching. Remember, if you're into Akitas, please support the channel by clicking that subscribe button. You can also go over to our new website, The Akita Life, where we are posting articles and other content about Akitas, and we're going to start selling some really cool Akita swag and other things like that. So please check that out. Thank you so much for your support, and we will see you in the next video.